Hey everyone, welcome back. I reached out to you guys through Instagram asking what questions you lot have for me. The response was amazing. If I don't get around to your question, it's not because I don't love you. It's because you asked a garbage question. I'll break this Q&A down into 3 sections: musical, professional, and personal. I'll link to each section in the description. That way, if you don't give a shit about certain things, you can jump to the other ones. All right, let's start with the music questions. This question comes from Saucy Mike Mallet. What plays in your car when you are driving? This answer might come as a bit of a surprise, but I rarely listen to music while driving. I spend most of my working hours doing music, so when I'm doing something like driving, I like to escape it. I listen to a lot of podcasts, sports radio, sports games. My personal favorite podcasts at the moment are Stuff You Should Know, gotta love that one, Anything by Dan Carlin, and there's a local Winnipeg one called Character about the crazy life of this guy, and that's another one that I'm super into. Okay, Ninwad Tooth asks, is majoring in music worth it? So for me, it definitely was worth it, but I think I went into school with a bit of a different outlook than a lot of my peers. First of all, I started my degree, I think about 4 years after I graduated high school. And in that period, I had a lot of time to do some introspection and really figure out what I wanted in my life. If you go into music school with the idea that you're gonna walk out and be able to get a job, then it's very much not worth going. But if you go in with the mindset that you're there to collect tools that will help give you a better chance to work in the music industry, then it's a great thing. It's also a great place to grow your network. So I kind of went in with that mindset, and because of that, it was very, very valuable to me. And I don't think I would be able to do what I do today without that experience. Sweet G Johnson asks, what do you do when you're experiencing writer's block? I think writer's block comes from a lack of preparation and a lack of skills. So for me, and the same thing applied when I was songwriting, I kind of walk around the world with what I call YouTube glasses, this idea that I'm always consistently, passively looking for ideas. And so whenever something piques that interest, I will jot it down in my phone, and I've got a massive list of things that I can potentially work on. So when I sit down to create, I'm not waiting to magically be inspired. I have a wealth of things to draw from. If one thing isn't working, I'll work on the other. If that's not working, there's still a ton of other things. I've also developed tools to be able to actively develop ideas and take them from point A to point B and eventually into a video or a song. So if you do find yourself experiencing writer's block, I would say that you need to actively work on improving your writing skills. Use some resources. There's a book called Writing Better Lyrics that I've talked about here before. That was one of the biggest ones for my songwriting. I'll link to it down in the description. Ines McIntosh asks, what is the best act you have seen live? That's a real tough question. I've had some amazing concert experiences. 2 of the ones that come to mind are seeing Derek Truck's band in a small theater in Winnipeg. There was like 300 people there. I didn't really know the band, I didn't know what to expect, and my mind was totally blown away. From there on, I was a massive fan. The other one was seeing John Mayer at the Enmore Theatre in Sydney, Australia. That was just cool because of the experience. I hadn't been in the country for long. I was just getting really into John Mayer. He put out Continuum fairly recently, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. Hearing him play through those songs, I was front row and center, and he seemed like he just really, really cared about that show and wanted to put on a great experience for everyone. On the flip side of that, Julio Figueiredo, sorry I butchered that, asks, what's the worst concert you've been to? This might ruffle some feathers, but the one that stands out to me was seeing Bob Dylan when I was 15, 16. At the time, I only really knew Bob Dylan as the guy who wrote Mr. Tambourine Man, Knocking on Heaven's Door, Blowing in the Wind, and so when I went to see him, I was expecting him to be playing those songs. If you've seen Bob Dylan live, you know that he likes to do some fairly drastic changes in his interpretations of his own songs, which wasn't really what I had signed up for. I feel like he didn't ever address the audience besides like a couple times. I think he was wearing a massive cowboy hat and a fake beard. So 16-year-old me wasn't overly impressed. At the time, I remember he played a song and said something like, hey, that's all along the Watchtower. I'm like, man, that didn't sound anything like All Along the Watchtower. I don't even think you sang any of those lyrics. All right, let's move on to some professional questions. Hugo Remspor asks, if you didn't pursue music, what would you be doing right now? Man, that's a tough question, and I don't really know the answer. Out of high school, I did some business classes in university and realized that really wasn't for me. At another point, I seriously considered going to law school, which I'm glad I didn't end up doing. I think whatever I would do outside of music would have to be something in the creative field. I really like the feeling of taking something and building something, whatever it may be. Maybe I'd be a carpenter. I don't know. This one comes from Rock Bottom Bros. They ask, should musicians today consider learning how to edit and record their own videos? Look who you're asking here. Of course I'm gonna say yes. I think the ability to make videos in this day and age is equally as important as being able to record your own songs. The reason I say that is because people are so much more inclined to watch an interesting video than just listen to music. I have a lot of musician friends on Facebook. I like music. Whenever somebody posts an instrumental track or something like that on SoundCloud, I'm not overly inclined to click it. But for me, if they post a video and there's a catchy thumbnail, 9 out of 10 times, I'm gonna watch it. Josu PVT asks, do you do YouTube full time? So I get questions like this fairly often from YouTube commenters, from family, from friends, basically asking, how do you do YouTube for a job? But yes, first of all, I do YouTube full time, but not exactly. Let me explain. All the money that I earn comes from YouTube in one way or another, but it doesn't necessarily come from AdSense. That makes up a tiny little portion of the overall money that I earn. A very big thing is Patreon. That helps me out a ton. Another thing I do is teach Skype lessons, and that comes from people like you, people who watch my YouTube videos who say, hey man, can we do a lesson? I sell my MP3s. There's a bunch of small little streams like that kind of add up and make a full-time income. On top of that, I do some sponsored content. That's a massive thing. And then I do a couple gigs every now and then, and a little bit of session work, but that makes just a tiny little portion of that. So I hope that answers that question. Z2K_17 asks, will you ever tour? I've done a fair bit of touring before I started doing the YouTube stuff. I would like to find a way of bringing Samurai Guitarist on the road, and recently I've been really thinking about how I can do this. I don't think it works in a traditional live concert experience. I think what I'd like to eventually do is do clinics, first in Canada and then maybe eventually in the States and then eventually around the entire world once hopefully I've gained the popularity to justify it. In my mind, what that would look like is it'd be like 50% of me performing, stuff like that. 25% would be talking about music, and then maybe 25% doing a question and answer with the audience. I don't know what the details would look like. I would love to do something like that eventually. Samurai Stevens, great name, my friend, asks, do you feel that the simpler the chord structure, the more commercially viable the song? I think if you look at a lot of pop music, that tends to be the case. I mean, we all know of that great Axis of Awesome song or video where they played 4 different chords and then played a ton of pop songs over top of it. However, that's not necessarily always the case. If you're creative, you can come up with really, really intricate harmony that also sounds really catchy. One of the best examples that I can think of is Blackbird by the Beatles. If you look at the chord structure in that song, it's amazing. What's happening there, it's theoretically really cool, but it also just sounds, it doesn't sound like it's difficult. It doesn't sound like it's abrasive or anything like that. It just really works. So I guess the answer is if you are creative enough, you can come up with something really complicated, and if it sounds good, people aren't gonna care. DeLuise66 asks, what are your goals? This is a great question, and I think I'm always harping on about having goals. I think my broader goal is to be able to sustain a lifetime in music and be comfortable, I guess, not have to worry too much about money. Some of my more specific goals would be continually doing 2 videos a week on YouTube, actively trying to grow the subscriber base. I think another thing that I would like to do is do a merch line eventually. Like I got some really cool concepts of Samurai Guitarist inspired t-shirts. My goal with that would be that people would just buy those t-shirts without knowing who I am, just because they're cool enough shirts. Another thing I mentioned was I'd like to eventually do clinics across the world, hopefully. Besides that, I guess the biggest goal is just to live a happy life and continue enjoying what I do every day. All right, let's move on to personal questions. Tyler Graham asks, do you respect authority? Man, I fight authority. Authority always wins. But I'll tell you one thing, I do respect authorita. Aaron Prane asks, how do you grow hair as awesome as yours? That's very flattering. Thank you, Aaron. To grow hair like mine, 2-step process. You get born, and you wait. Badali asks, what's your favorite movie? I'm gonna cheat a little bit here and go with 3 movies, the original Star Wars trilogy, anything Star Wars I watch, Clone Wars, Rebels, all the new movies. But I gotta go with the original trilogy there. Jacob Oberstadt asks, how to get up when feeling down? I think the best thing you can do is try to figure out what's bringing you down. If it's something that you have control over or you can influence, do your best to affect change on that situation. If it's something you don't have control over, then you have to find a way of becoming okay with that and moving on, because if you obsess and worry about things you can't control, nothing can come of that. Mitch Jenka asks, do you have any funny stories from when you worked at the guitar store? Oh yes, the tale of Big Bong, no pants. I feel like this was 11 a.m. on a Thursday or something, and this guy walks in wearing overalls, no shirt underneath, carrying a massive bong. He sits down in the acoustic guitar section, puts his bong down, starts playing some ditties. You know, the thing about overalls is they're only held up by these straps, and I think you know where I'm going with this. He's done playing his song, stands up, his overalls go right down, this guy is buck naked. There was a family over there, like a mother and her daughter, and this guy just like looks around and baked off his ass, pulls up his overalls and walks into the other section. I'm just watching this, I'm like, I hope this family didn't see this. So anyway, that was Big Bong, no pants. Co-Blue Music asks, what inspires you most to play guitar? I guess today my inspiration's very different than it used to be. One of my main inspirations before was the fact that I played guitar to improve at guitar. And that's why I would practice so hard. That's why I would play. Now, I play guitar because that's my livelihood. What brings me excitement is making videos on YouTube, releasing them to people, seeing the response from people like you guys. That is very incredible, and I'm incredibly fortunate to have that opportunity to do that. So that's what gets me excited, coming up with an idea and sharing it with the world. Plus, if I don't, I'm gonna have no money and have to live off pigeon meat or something. Jose Froggy Fresh asks, when will I find true love? When you learn to love yourself, baby. Alternatively, when you find out that green tea Kit Kats are a real and delicious thing. All right, that's gonna wrap it up. Make sure you guys follow me on Instagram so that when I do another one of these in the future, you can get your questions in, or you can feel free to hit me up in the comments here and I'll probably go back and sift through them when I do another one of these. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. My name's Samurai Guitarist. These videos are made possible by the people who support me on Patreon. Big ups and my truest thank yous to you guys. New videos twice a week as always. Stay tuned. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you again next time.